people don't also after they leave the army. And for many in Israel, that's even considered something that's too humane. Like, why are we doing this? When actually it's just a way of legitimizing the area to be battleground. It's not actually, I don't think it's actually to help people like save their lives. Now, going into fighting in Gaza compared to what I've experienced in the West Bank is a completely different story. Because we do this kind of, we treat neighborhoods as battlegrounds, and we treat it as total war, and we don't want to deal with civilian populations. We don't make a difference. Whoever state is a legitimate target. Then we enter with much like another level of engagement of firepower that I've ever seen. It's completely a different scale. And there's this idea of we take zero risks on our own soldiers. So the way you enter is with very, very heavy artillery and bombings from above, from the sky. And this makes you feel much more confident as a soldier who's entering. And it leaves a level of destruction that I've never experienced before in anything I did in the West Bank. Another example for that could be the way we enter homes in Gaza. Before that, in the West Bank, you maybe invade a home. You're not really asking if you can enter or not. You maybe break the door, you maybe kick the door, or do whatever you need to get in. But in Gaza, you don't even go through the door because it might be trapped. So you fire a rocket from a shoulder rocket into the wall and you enter through the wall. So the way we're like engaging with this whole area is completely different. We were there for like 2 weeks, I'd say maybe 3. And as you're there, you start to see it becomes more difficult to treat the place as if it's just a battleground because you're actually staying in people's homes. At least that's the way it was for me. You start seeing family photos, signs of life, people who live in this place, school books. We heard of a family that one of our units met in one of the homes, and they let her die in the bombings from above, from fighter jets. So this kind of idea that everybody is just who stayed is engaged in fighting, and that we're in a battleground. It's hard to keep it when you actually see that you're in a neighborhood. And to your point, that has to do with the dehumanization. I think once you start to question that or to feel like that idea cracked, then you have 2 options. Either you start questioning the whole thing that you're doing, or you have to turn to dehumanization, because then if you don't do that, you're left with a lot of guilt, I believe.
Linked to that, do you think that IDF soldiers currently in Gaza have vengeance, I suppose, in their heads? And that vengeance is being maybe legitimised by, I suppose, those higher up in the army, but also politicians. And when I say vengeance, it doesn't simply mean in their heads, say, identifying Hamas members, for example, but that the risk is any civilian in Gaza could be on the receiving end of that vengeance. What's your sense of kind of how many IDF soldiers maybe are currently thinking right now, and how sanctioned that might be?
I think naturally, after seeing what happened on the 7th of October, people, not only soldiers, everybody in Israel might have this feeling that they want revenge. Maybe it wore down by now, but even I maybe felt it to a certain extent, you know. But what's sad and what's different these days is that this kind of feeling and this desire for revenge and this idea that we don't need to make a difference between Hamas operatives and civilians isn't just something that you feel inside and you kind of want to feel, and you might feel ashamed of it. It's completely normalized by the highest ranks, not only in government, which is already really fucked up, but they're, I guess, trying to be populist and to ride this wave of hate. But also, you can see this from within higher ranks in the army, which is really frightening. And I can definitely see how certain statements that used to be more considered kind of things that you're not supposed to say, like we need to flatten out Gaza, there shouldn't be anybody left there after we finish this war, or it's about time we finish them once and for all kinds of statements like that have become something that are quite normal around me, sadly, and they become normalized because of our leaders.
You saw those images, as we've all seen images, video footage of Palestinian men stripped nearly naked down to their underpants and paraded in front of cameras. I mean, a former British soldier made the point that removing clothes of people isn't in itself something which you wouldn't see in military operation, check for suicide belts, things like that. But doing mass arrests where people are stripped and then paraded in front of cameras obviously contravenes the Geneva Conventions. It's very clear that you can't do that according to international law. But what's your sense of when you saw those images and footage? There are also allegations that were obviously taken away, and allegations of torture, that kind of thing. What's your sense of what's happening there? How it's been justified and what the purpose is?
Yeah, my sense is, first of all, there's no doubt that many people in Gaza are part of Hamas, and they might even participated in what happened on the 7th of October. It's not like I know who is a terrorist and who isn't. I can't come here and tell you, oh, I know all of these people are innocent and none of them have done anything on the 7th. But I don't see any security, military logic behind parading people nakedly in front of cameras, like naked people in front of cameras in such a humiliating way. One thing that it makes me think is that this can only help Hamas more gain power because they have maybe an ideology in which they say all Zionists, all Israelis, all Jews are kind of monsters that it's impossible to speak with in any kind of dialogue, and we must fight because we have no other option, so we have no one to speak with. And images like that really serve, I think, that narrative on Hamas's side. But what I think they do, and their purpose is actually, it might be twofold. It might be one idea would be, and I think this is kind of something you hear a lot, and it is kind of like this, it's a bit Orientalist logic about the Middle East, is that we need to talk to them in their language. You know, we need to stop being so humane, as if we're not the most humane nation in all of history. And we need to start understanding that we're in the jungle and we need to play according to the jungle rules. So maybe something like that, according to that logic, is kind of showing them, oh, you messed with us, you really messed up this time, which has been proven for years, from whenever I was alive at least, that this never caused any more safety or security, only caused the opposite. It caused more escalation and more violence and more feeling that there's no safety. So I don't see how that logic works so far if we're speaking security, only from security eyes. But what I think that the deeper and maybe the real reason for these images is to serve the Israeli society. I think Israeli society needs to feel like